welcome back to the Dr. Balmer channel. So, as some of you might remember from the last part of our overclocking adventure, now featuring the Noctua NHD15 cooler for the CPU, we were able to extend our world record lead for Firestrike for the combination of the GTX950 and the AMD 7850K CPU. And actually we reached 5,942 points in Firestrike. Now that's pretty close to 6,000, isn't it? It's about 58 points away from 6,000 points. And that made me wonder a bit, because it seems that we are a bit stuck here with the limits of the overclock. The GPU is at its limits, and the system, the CPU, memory, North Bridge, and so forth, we have pretty much established a maximum of what we can run, and we do have a pretty high V-core voltage offset already. However, since we are so close, maybe it's worth trying a bit more. The one thing I was most disappointed about was getting the North Bridge frequency higher, because at this 1900 settings it means we have a multiplier of 19 times 106, and that's 2014 or so megahertz. And we know that 2080 megahertz is okay, and 2100 megahertz is not okay. What can we do? Well, these settings obviously worked, and we were able to run Firestrike and get world record numbers for this combination of CPU and GPU, but since we established that the 106 B clock is the highest we can run with some sort of stability, 107 was very unstable. We got an issue during boot saying boot device inaccessible. So why not try to, well, maybe sacrifice a little bit on the system RAM speed, but on the other hand, maybe increasing the North Bridge frequency. So let's say we set it to 2000. This would mean 20 times 106, and that's 2120, and we know that 2100 was an issue that you couldn't get past. So how about we lower this to 104, so keeping the B clock at a 104 and this one on 2000. It means that we'll get an effective frequency of 2080 megahertz. And yes, we do sacrifice a bit on the memory, but not a huge lot. We're still at 1941 megahertz, but we increase north bridge a lot, and if we set a multiplier of 44 instead of 43, it means a target CPU speed of 4576, and previously we had a CPU frequency of, let's see, 4558, so it's less than 20 megahertz more on the CPU, and we would gain quite a bit on the north bridge. So let's try this without any further adjustments on the voltage side of things and see if this works. So hopefully we'll boot here. We do post. That's a good start. I'm sorry, there's a lot of glare in the display. Today, but it's one of those days when yeah, it's a bit sunny outside and I can't really seem to keep the clock watchdog timeout. Yeah, that's CPU voltage, so maybe we can adjust that a tiny little bit. Yeah, so the light conditions today are a bit not in our favor, meaning a lot of glare. I wish this display would have had a matte finish, but it's not, so it is what it is. Okay, no automatic restart, so I shall do a forced restart, but that just tells you how close to instability we actually were previously on the CPU. So less than 20 megahertz up and we get blue screens. So let's get into BIOS again, and it seems we will have to increase our voltages a little bit more. So 1375, let's say 0.15 volts. Yes, and hopefully this will be enough, because you are pretty high up there. Okay, now we'll get some Windows repair, so I will pause momentarily and so we don't have to wait for it. So now still clock watchdog timeout. That's not good. Yeah, let's set an offset of 0.1625. And I suppose that Windows will try to do a repair thing again. So let's see here. Or maybe not. Okay. Will this work? No, IRQL not less or equal. Yeah, still issues. Right. Not the same issue, but still. So So how high on the voltage can one go? Of course, the amount of voltage you need increases as you reach the limits of the CPU. So 0.175. Yeah, higher than that I'm not really comfortable anymore, I think. But for a short run I hope we can pull this off. Okay, repair thing again, so one moment. Okay, logging in, let's see here. Yeah, we didn't get this far before, so 0.175 volts. Let's just open... no. Yeah, still... that's not good. Okay. We'll have to rethink... get back into BIOS and rethink a bit. So let's do that. Yeah, I have an idea. Let's dial this back to 0.1375 that we had previously on the CPU offset. And then I'm thinking, how about if we lower the B clock a little bit, how will that affect the system overall? So for instance, what if we would set this to 95? So we go below 100. And then we can choose a higher DDR3 memory setting. So we can go to next level, which on 100 B clock would be 2133, but now will be 2026. However, I'm not entirely sure that the RAM will hold up. So I want to test the RAM first, see if we have any sort of stability on the RAM on these speeds. Let's the multiplier, yeah, let's keep that on, let's see here, 45, 46, 47. Yeah, 47 will be 4465, and 48 will be 4560 megahertz. So pretty much the same as 4558 that we had working previously as our highest. But I will dial this down first to 47, just so that we don't tax the CPU a lot. And then the north bridge frequency, so it will mean 20 times 95, which is 1900. So we set this to 2100. It would mean 21 times 95, and that's 1995. So let's leave it at that for the moment, just so that we only sort of stress the RAM frequency here and see if this works at all. So save changes, and yeah, what have we got? 104 B clock 95 DDR3. We change, yep, because we lowered the B clock. We can then increase the APU multiplier and north bridge frequency, and we'll also dial back the CPU offset voltage, because we know that this should work. So let's try this. I have no idea if this will boot or not. A B clock of 95 might impose other problems, but we're at least posting. So let's see here. if we can get into Windows and then start hardware info for the summary and see that our calculations are correct. So here we are, and yeah, base clock 47 ratio, but we're running at 4465. North reaches 2000, and the RAM at 1013.4 megahertz. So yeah, at least we got so far. We have 880 on the memory and 210 on the core, so this should work for Firestrike. But let's do a run and see if we this won't generate any high scores because we have lowered the CPU frequency, and the north bridge is 2000 megahertz. So just to see if the system RAM, the DDR3 RAM, holds up for this frequency, and if it does, it means maybe we can dial in some numbers that that will enable us to get a higher north bridge frequency. So yeah, I will just run this and we shall see if we crash or not. So we did crash. It says run was cancelled by user, but I didn't cancel it. So maybe we are a bit unstable, which is unfortunate. We might, of course, try to dial back the GPU a bit, because that is also at the edge of stability. So we didn't see artifacting, so we shouldn't have a problem with that. But let's put this to 195, that we know is perfectly stable for the GPU core, and then do a rerun. So we crashed in the first test previously of Firestrike, and let's see if we get past this time. We did. Oh yeah, quite a bit of artifacting. So maybe the GPU memory now is an issue. Let's get back into precision. Or the system RAM is, of course, giving us a bit of trouble. But let's set this to 875. Yeah, at the edge of stability you have to be a little bit pragmatic, and you might have to do quite a lot of tries before you get a result, if you get a result. So let's run this again. Okay, we're back in the second graphics test of Firestrike, which is where we crashed. And oh yeah, we do have artifacting. Okay, and I would attribute that to maybe not the GPU RAM, not the VRAM then, but to our system RAM. So what I want to do is get back into BIOS. And actually I want to try to lower the RAM voltage, because voltage for RAM isn't always linear, or it doesn't always mean you get a higher frequency range just by increasing voltage. So it's the curve is a bit different. So let's try 1.65 instead of 655 and go with that. Just being curious if this is the case or not. So let's see here. Okay, so we did boot into Windows. Let's see if we get the same behavior in Firestrike again. Well, we didn't get this far previously. All I did was lower the VRAM, no, lower the system RAM voltage 5 millivolts. So this won't be a record run, but we did pass it. It seems. Let's wait for it. 5846. That's still a respectable number. It's not 5942, but it's pretty okay. I won't save this number, but I want to compare with our previous scores and the distribution of scores. So let's see here. Yeah, should separate TimeSpy from this one. Okay, so yeah, previously we had a record run at these settings, and 5942 we got. GPU 7600. And we're still at the 7598 graphics score right now. Physics 5454. Now we have 5373. But we do, we are running the CPU at about 100 MHz lower or so, I think. And this can be easily adjusted. Combined score 2375, 2251. So yeah. Okay, this is promising. And then we also dropped, of course, the GPU core and VRAM to 875 and on the MEM and 195 on the core, because we know that works in Firestrike. So okay, this is great. So what I want to do now is go back into BIOS. Alright, and so 2026 megahertz we have, and that sort of worked in Firestrike. But we're running 4465 megahertz on the CPU. So let's change this multiplier to 48 from 47, and we should get to 4560. And yeah, let's just try that without touching the north breach, which is effectively still at 1995. So we only increase the CPU now to 4560, and hopefully those 2 extra megahertz from 4558 that we're running, that we got the high scores on the 5942 megahertz, that 2 extra megahertz won't matter too much in terms of stability. If this runs, I expect a higher physics score and a higher combined score, first of all. No, we're a bit out of luck. Watchdog timeout. And the only thing I changed was the CPU multiplier. So that's a bit discouraging, but we're at 4560 megahertz, not at 4578 or something like that we tried a few minutes back. So maybe we can increase this to 0.15 again on the CPU offset and see if maybe it will be enough. Yes. Okay, logging in. So, frequency 4559. On the CPU. Yeah, multiplier 48 and bus 95. North bridge still at 1995 MHz. Memory still at 2026. Okay, so that voltage increase at least didn't crash us immediately, like the first boot here. So let's try to go for 3D Mark and see if we make it that far. So let's see if this is enough to run. Oh no, I believe we crashed. Yep. Still crashed, but we did get a lot further. So, yeah, that's not good. We can really see the exponential voltage increase needed. So 0.15, 0.1625 then. These settings are, of course, even if Firestrike runs, does not mean stability, 100% stability. But for benchmarking, maybe if we can find the highest running settings, then that would be great. So I will let it boot and start 3D Mark. Okay, we are in 3D Mark and loading Firestrike, and we didn't get this far last time before the additional voltage increase on the V-core, but will that be enough or not? It seems that this CPU won't like it much higher than this. That's for sure. So the first test is about 1030 frames if we manage to run it completely at a good run. But this perhaps will be lower still because Northbridge is at 2 GHz. It was pretty good, almost 1030 frames, and we actually managed to get through it. But the second test is a bit heavier, I think. And this test is about 1305 frames when we got the high score. Frames, 1100, 1200, almost there, 1305, but not quite perhaps, but maybe. And this test is about 330 frames we got when we got the highest score. Yeah, pretty much up there, and that is attributed to CPU frequency, since it's a physics test. And this test is about 210 frames when we got the highest score. So 170, 180, 190, 200. Oh yeah, that's 215 or something once the panel was removed. And oh my gosh, 5954. That is higher, my friends. I wasn't expecting that, actually. I was not expecting that. Not at these settings. So, yeah, our previous score was 5942, and now we have increased by 12 points. And we're only 46 points away from the magical 6,000 points. 6,000 points for a GTX 950 running on an AMD 7850K bulldozer era, not the best CPU kind of hardware architecture stuff. So let's compare. Right. So we can see we are 2 MHz higher on the CPU than from our previous highest score. The memory is about 46 MHz faster, which is nice. We have B clock of 95. We're at 195 core offset, 875 mem offset, and we got 5954 points. The GPU score is 7617 instead of 7600. Physics score 5463 instead of 5454, and combined score 2380 instead of 2375. And that gained us 12 points. So yeah, 46 points. Where should we get those from? Well, my friends, I believe the answer is hidden somewhere in the BIOS. So let's head over there again. Okay, so back in BIOS, I think that we can all agree on that 4560 MHz is the limit of the CPU frequency capabilities, given that extra 2 MHz required a bump in voltage from an offset we had previously at 0.1375 to 0.1625. But the good news is that we lowered the DRAM voltage and got better results. So this shows that the voltage frequency curve for DRAM is not just heading straight up for frequency and voltage to be stable. It sort of goes like this in a bow. So you have to find the sweet spot. So on the top here, instead of increasing voltage, and you get lower frequency results, and also too low voltage will also get lower frequency results. So you only get higher frequency capabilities up to a certain point, and then even higher frequency will make it fall off again. Even higher voltage will make the frequency fall off again, the stable frequency. Yes. So what more can we do? The DRAM as well. I don't know if it will be stable at higher frequencies, but we can't really increase the APU frequency even with the DB clock with even 1 MHz, because we can't really run the CPU at a higher clock than this, it seems. But what I want to do is, if I set the North Bridge frequency to 2200 from 2100, then that's 22 times 95. That's 2090 megahertz. And yeah, will that be stable? Because 2100 wasn't at all. But let's try this and see how far we get. At least we post. That's a start. We get to loading windows. Do we get to the login screen? Yeah. Will we be able to actually enter Windows? We did. But it's sort of behaving a bit strange. I don't see anything, any icons. We got the precision, but yeah, the icons are not loading. Yeah, this is not a sign of stability, at least. So I shall try to get back into BIOS. Okay, so yeah, 2100 we know was bad for Northbridge. 2090, well, it booted, but it wasn't really stable. How about 0.15 volts offset on the North Bridge? Let's try it. We really didn't see a lot of stability gains previously at 2100 with the increased north bridge voltage. So yeah, will we get any gain in stability by upping it on 2090 megahertz? System service exception. Yeah, not what I was hoping for. So let's get back into BIOS. So it actually performed worse, but 0.19375, just to try it, see if it actually makes a difference. We shouldn't run these voltages, of course, at long periods of time, maybe. But what will the reaction be from memory management? Yeah, not really what I was hoping for. 0.225. Okay, so I'll have to wait for that one. The Windows diagnostics. So rebooting. Oh, we actually got a logon screen, but IRQL not less or equal. Okay, so this is not what I was hoping for. Let's get back into BIOS. And have a think. Okay, so what options do we have? I lowered back the voltage offset on the north bridge to, we had 0.1, I set it to 0.125 now. So that all should be fine. But I'm thinking, okay, so I really want the north bridge higher than 2000 megahertz. I know that about 2080 is okay. That seemed to work, but some time ago at least. And what can we do? Well, I'm thinking that what if I yeah, let's see here, 22. So if I set this to 2100, it's a multiplier of 21, and then if we increase the APU frequency to 96, we get a problem because we have to lower the multiplier. So setting this to 47 instead of 48, we end up at about 4512 megahertz, which is 48 megahertz lower than our previous run, but the RAM speed is 20 megahertz higher, and I am not sure if that will work for the RAM. Probably not, but yeah, the other options aren't really good as either. So, however, 21 times 47. Sorry, 21 times 96 is 2016. 2200. 22 times 96 is 2112. So yeah, that's not good either. But what if we go to 94 and set 48? We also get 4512 megahertz on the CPU. We get 2005 on the DRAM, which should be fine since that's 15 megahertz or 20 megahertz slower. But the North Bridge will be 22 times 94, which is 2068 megahertz, which is 68 megahertz faster. Now, if this works, we will find out if North Bridge frequency of 2068 trumps a higher CPU speed of about 48 megahertz and a DRAM speed of about 20 megahertz extra. So let's find this out. Let's see, first of all, if this is stable. At least the RAM and CPU get a bit of a stress relief, and the North Bridge instead gets a bump up. Okay, so let's inspect what we have here. At least we got into Windows. Yeah, frequency is 4514 megahertz. And we're running 4514, yeah, and 2016 9 megahertz on the North Bridge. So yeah, okay, leaving everything else the same. Yeah, memory of course is a bit slower than previous run, but yeah, leaving this at 195 and 875 like previously, we go to 3D Mark. So 3D Mark loaded up, and let's do a run. Okay, so we got 5910, which is lower, but it's not even in the 58s, so we aren't that low. And let's just compare the numbers a bit. So graphics score is a bit lower at 7540. Physics 5463, So physics score, yeah, also dropped a bit. Okay, and then combined score is pretty much the same, a couple of points lower. But I will do a rerun off camera and just see if that makes a difference, because it has made a difference previously. But let's try it. The rerun has finished, but we got a lower score, so yeah. Okay, but now we know a few things at least. So yeah, let's head back into BIOS, I think. Okay, so these settings weren't as successful as the previous ones, with the 95 B clock and a bit lower North Bridge at 2100 base setting, which gave us about 2 GHz on the North Bridge. Okay, but what about so 95 we had, right, and then we had 2026 MHz on the DRAM, and then we had 2100 here, so that was 21 times 95, which was 2000 GHz, 2000 MHz, or 1995. Yeah, if we lower this one to 47, we get 4465 MHz on the CPU, but we raise this to 96. We'll go back to 4512, but now with the higher system RAM clock of 2047. I'm not sure if that's gonna be stable though. We had some issues at 2026 until we lowered the DRAM voltage to 1.65 from 1.655. However, we can try it, and it's the same frequency that we had just now on the CPU, but it would raise the North Bridge frequency. So instead of 1995 effective clock, we get 21 times 96, which is 2016. So that would be nice. The only thing we lose here is, of course, some CPU speed. Yeah, let's maybe stability due to DRAM. But let's see if it works. We're posting at least, and we should be. Okay, so we've gotten this far. Let's check. So, let me zoom in a little bit. 4515 megahertz. 2017 on the North Bridge. And 2048 or 2050 megahertz effective clock on the DRAM. So let's see if this works. We might be unstable because DRAM, yeah. I don't know how much these RAM modules can do. They are rated at 2000 megahertz at 1.65 volts, and we are at 1.65 volts, but we have lowered, tightened some timings, some secondary timings at least. We could of course loosen them up if needed, if we need even higher DRAM clocks, but we can of course try this first. Okay, so the run has finished and we got 5877, which interestingly enough is lower, but let's check with our previous runs. So yeah, GPU score 7617, 7551, so yeah, that's lower. Physics 5463, 5446, it's a bit lower because we have a lower CPU clock. Combined 2311. So yeah, the lower CPU clock isn't helping us either here. But I will do a rerun of camera and we can see what we get. The run finished and we got 5920. So we're almost up there, but graphics score is still lower. Physics score 5448, combined 2376. So let's check again with our best run, which yeah, graphics score 7617, physics 5468, combined 2380. So combined is pretty much there, but physics, but graphics score is lower. But the interesting thing is that the system RAM has not caused a crash. So I will go back into BIOS. Yeah. So what if this was 97? It would mean that we are back, right up back at 4559, which is what we had at our highest run, right? The DRAM would be at 2069 though, which feels like a stretch for this kit at these settings to have. And the North Bridge would be at 21 times 97, which is 2037. It seems like that would be the ultimate sort of configuration, but the DRAM here frequency, yeah, I'm not sure. But let's try it. Yes. Critical process died. Right. That sounds a bit critical. Yeah. Okay. So, what if we do like we did last time? Instead of 1.65, we go with 1.60. We'll lower it once again a bit. I don't expect this to solve it this time, because the kit is rated at 1.65. But why not give it a try? Well, we got this far. We actually got into Windows. Very interesting. Can we manage to open hardware info? We can. So we are at 4562 actually. These 2 extra megahertz, I wonder if they will make things bad for us or not, because we had issues with the 2 megahertz previously. North bridge at 2038, memory at 2070 effective clock. So if this runs, my friends, and then of course we can increase in that case the clock for Firestrike a bit for the core on the GPU, and maybe 5 megahertz on the memory. But first of all, we have to see if this runs, and it might crash because there are a lot of clocks here that are at the edge. Okay, 3 mark at least opened. And even though opening 3 mark might be sort of a load on the system, it's nothing compared to actually running the benchmark. So let's run Firestrike and see what happens. So we passed the test, it seems. Maybe. So 5933. It's still a bit lower, but in theory this should be sort of the ultimate configuration here. Because when we got 5954, let's see here. I'll bring up my notepad sheet. Right, when we got 5954, we had a CPU clock of the same 4560, same memory timings, but now we have a higher memory clock. And however, the GPU score was 7617, and now we have 7561, so we are a bit lacking a bit on the graphics score. Physics score 5463, now 5455, but combined score 2390 and previously 2380. So I'm hopeful that a rerun might help. But let's make a copy of this. And we are at 4562 and 2070. B clock 97, right? We got a score of 5933. GPU was low at 7561. Physics 5455. Combined 2390. I'm noting this down because we had a 10-point higher combined score. So I will do a rerun, and I'll be back once it's finished. And the test is finishing. Scores incoming. 5946. So we're almost at our best. We're only 8 points off, so I would say this is run-to-run variance. So actually, let's note this down. The rerun 5946, GPU 7570, still a bit low. 5496, however, on the physics, and combined 2393. So yeah, the GPU. Yeah, well, let's target the GPU then. Let's go with 210, right? Apply, and we'll save the memory for later. And let's run this again. Alright, well, finally, 5966. And 5966 is a new world record high score for the CPU GPU combination once again. 5966. Okay, we'll have to note this down. Yeah, I fixed the this said 1995, so it's 2037 here. So I fixed this, and yeah, 210 core, so 5966 from 46. That's 20 points, which is quite a lot. GPU 7610. We've had 7617. Physics 5498, which is the highest we've had, and combined score also the highest at 2395. Oh, so we're 34 points away. I don't know how we're supposed to gain those, but well, we have the 880 setting here to set, Let's try that. And run again. So 5966. Okay, scores incoming once again. Maybe. Ooh, 5964. 2 points away from our previous best. Okay. Well, I'm having a bit of trouble seeing how we should gain at least 34 points from the 5966 to get to 6000. We can, of course, we'll probably crash here, but how about 215? Oh, so we were at 210. Hang on a minute, maybe 215 worked sometime. Let me... Yeah, 210 core. Or maybe it didn't work. So, okay. Let's try this with 215 core. Yeah, it didn't crash, it seems. Maybe it was a good run. Let's have a look. Yes, yes, my friends, yes. This is the moment of truth. Oh yeah, this makes me really happy. It's like being reborn or something. Yeah. What can be said? I'm I mean, it's a number, but I'm rarely this happy for a number of 6014. But today I am, and I mean, how many runs, how many settings, how many blue screens have we suffered through to get here? So let's compare a bit. Yeah, so 6014, that's I mean, a whole lot more than 5966, and we achieved it by running 880 mem and 215 core, which isn't stable on the GPU side for time spy, for instance. But the GPU score was crazy high at 7706 from 7610. That's almost 100 points. That's insane. And physics score is exactly the same, and combined score reached 2400 right on the bat. So yeah, I couldn't be happier. And 6014, I mean, let's compare it online. It's better than 20% of all results. Well, that's nice. But let's go to results. CPU 7850K, GPU 950, and we choose Firestrike. So yeah, there we go. Yeah, this must be celebrated somehow. Let's actually compare this. 6014. Let's compare that to the same CPU, the 7850K, but let's choose the GTX960 instead. So yeah, the first place is 6404. That's less than 400 points away from what we got now with the same CPU. So 6014, yeah, we would be ranked number 45 on the GTX 960 Hall of Fame with the 7850K, of course. So we're at a very good starting point regarding the overall overclock of the system for further testing. And yeah, and now my fingers are itching. They really want to get their hold of a GTX 960. That would be a nice way to celebrate this. Getting a 960 and trying to do the same thing. Going all the way up to the top and reaching, I don't know how hard it is to beat 6404 with the 960. No idea, but we are at 6014 with the 950. Is 6500, is that extremely difficult? Or 7000? I don't know. So yeah, we should have a closer look into it and compare GTX 950 to 960 actually. So on Tech Power Up, we can search for the 950. Maybe we should say GTX 950. This one, and then a GTX 960. Oh, sorry, 60. Just a standard model. And do we have any means of comparison here? Not really. So let's do it ourselves. And zoom out a little bit here. So yeah, okay, so the chip is the same, GM206, but we have 1024 cores on the 960 versus 768 cores on the 950. We have 64 TMUs on the 960 versus 48, 32 ROPs on the 950 and 32 ROPs on a 960. 2 GB of VRAM, 2 GB of VRAM, both are DDR5, and we have the same bus, 128-bit. So there is a difference, but it's not huge. Of course, we get a pretty decent core uplift and TMUs, but let's see here. So we have a relative score comparison here, normalized to 100% for the GTX 960. Where does the GTX 950 land? There, 81% of the performance of the GTX 960. So can gain a 19 percentage points here. And then also, what clocks do we have? So let's do a quick comparison here. Base clock 1127 and boost clock 1178. And for the 950, 1024 and 1188. So yeah, not a okay. The base clock is higher, but we'll overclock it anyway. So memory clock 1653 versus 1753. We'll overclock that as well. So yeah, now I think that the right way to celebrate this is to get hold of a 960. Let me know if you agree or not. So I will see what I can do. But yeah, there you go. Being persistent. Does it? And I really didn't think that we would get such a jump up from 5966, but we did. And so there you go. And we will try out time spy as well, but we'll have to lower some GPU clocks. So let's do that.